Are you struggling to get your photos exposed properly? Are you struggling to get your photos in tack-sharp focus every time, regardless of what it is you're shooting? Well, in today's video, I'm going to explain exactly why that is and how you can fix it. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Paul and I am a photographer and filmmaker based in Western Colorado. In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about aperture. Aperture is one part of what we call the exposure triangle, and I will be going into more detail on the other parts in future videos, so make sure you stay tuned for those. So what is aperture? Now, aperture is the bladed diaphragm inside of your lens, and it controls exactly how much light enters the lens and hits the sensor of your camera. The smaller your aperture, the less light comes in through your lens. The larger your aperture, the more light comes in through your lens. This is measured in what we call stops. And aperture numbers can range anywhere from 1.2 to f22, or sometimes, rarely, higher. The lower the number, the more wide open your aperture is. The higher the number, the more closed your aperture is. So, lower number equals more light, which means higher exposure. Higher number means less light, which reduces the exposure in your image, making it darker. If you're having a hard time with overexposed photos, try closing down your aperture. Say, if you're shooting at f1.8, try shooting at f4 or 5.6. Another thing aperture controls is what we call depth of field. Now, put simply, depth of field is the amount of your image that is in focus. Take, for example, this portrait. This is shot with a wide open aperture, around f1.8. Because the aperture is so wide open, your depth of field is very, very shallow. This is great if you want to isolate your subject and make your subject stand out from your background or the rest of the image. It blurs the rest of the image out of focus and leaves only your subject sharp. This is what we call a shallow depth of field. Contrast that to this landscape shot, this big shot of a mountain where obviously you'd want the whole landscape, or as much of it as possible, in focus. This was taken with a very narrow aperture, so the number was high. And what this does is increase your depth of field. So the amount of your image that is in focus is much greater. If you're having a hard time getting your images tack sharp and nailing focus, think about your aperture before you go to shoot. And also think about what it is you're shooting. If you're shooting a portrait, yes, you can shoot wide open, but maybe think about using autofocus, or really spend time to make sure that your focus, when focusing manually, is dialed in. Alternatively, if you are shooting what we call an environmental portrait and are trying to showcase both the subject and the landscape that they are in, you can shoot with a deep depth of field, so a high aperture number, and that will cause everything in your image to be in focus, showcasing more of what it is you're trying to show. A deep depth of field makes landing focus on a subject much easier because your depth of field, the amount of your image that is in focus, is much greater. However, this is not very good if you are wanting to isolate your subject from the background and make them pop out, as it were. So that's it from me, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. If this makes sense, do leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you want to see more camera tips coming soon, then don't forget to subscribe and ring the little notification bell. If you have any other questions regarding aperture and its effects, feel free to put them in the comments below, or there's a link to my Instagram down in the description. You can check out some of my other photography work, and also send me a DM. I would be more than happy to answer your questions. Until next time, this is Paul, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.